Our next panel is Growing UK Innovation for Global Impact. We'll be hearing from startup companies and UK government innovation funding bodies. And the discussion is particularly relevant considering the Rio Tinto recent investment of $150 million to the Imperial College London Centre for Future Materials and the imminent launch of this centre. UK institutions are driving technological change in the critical mineral sector, and over the past few years, the UK has implemented a number of innovation grant programs and bilateral partnerships for critical minerals technology developments. So I'm pleased to introduce our speakers to the stage. We have Nick Stirk from Materials Nexus, Jeff Bormann from Bioscope Technologies, Julian Hetherington from the Advanced Propulsion Centre, Martyn Cherrington from UKRI, and our chair, Sarah Gordon from Imperial College London. Thank you.
Okay, so hands up, anybody in this room who has something to do with research, innovation, inventing stuff, or just doing stuff in a different way. Excellent. And I'm going to sort of go out on a limb here and say that's maybe one of the reasons why the new government and the modern industrial strategy said that the UK is really good when it comes to things like research and doing stuff in a new way. So that's exactly what this panel is all about. It's about growing UK innovation for a truly global impact. So not just keeping it secret and squirreled away on our nice little island or islands, but actually empowering the world to do things differently so that we really can provide those minerals and the metals that we need for a sustainable future. So Kirsty gave us a little bit of an introduction, but I'm going to pass over to my wonderful speakers, and if we can start maybe from the left-hand side, if we want to just introduce ourselves quickly with a bit more depth. Over to you.
Nothing about the business, just about the individual.
Maybe go with something that none of us know about. But don't worry, he's not going to arrest us.
Yeah, well, it depends on what you say.
Is the policeman still here?
Yeah, because it's his opportunity to ask me a stupid question. My name's Nick Stirk. I'm a co-founder of Materials Nexus, one of 4 co-founders. Hopefully I'll get an opportunity to introduce the business in a moment. But my function within MatNex is I look after the commercial function. I run the commercial team, identifying the value proposition, engaging with the market, and hopefully I'll get an opportunity to talk about the market in a moment. One thing interesting about me, 2 things interesting if you don't mind. I had a helicopter pilot's license at one time, and secondly, for anybody that's into fitness, I've entered a High Rocks in Bilbao in February.
There we go. Thank you very, very much, Nick. Fantastic. Over to, are you a helicopter pilot as well?
No.
Excellent.
Mountain biker, but that's about it. Okay. Yeah, I'm Jeff Bormann. I'm the CEO of Bioscope Technologies. I've been in the electronics recycling and battery recycling industry for around about 43 years. And I've gone through a number of scenarios of helping companies to build businesses from research right up for full-scale recycling processes. And Bioscope is very much in the innovation of taking a bioprocess to extract minerals, well, metals from electronic circuit boards and recovering that in a sustainable route. And we've had to go through quite a process on that. But we're moving from a research stage to a full production stage, hopefully by the end of this year, maybe January. And that'll be a commercialized pilot. Well, it's bigger than a pilot. Yeah, it's a commercialized plant, but it's a small one compared with where we want to be, about 1,000 tons a year to 10,000 tons a year in about 3 years' time.
Fantastic. Congratulations with all of that. Incredibly exciting.
Yes,
thank you.
It is.
Martyn, over to yourself.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Martyn Cherrington from Innovate UK, and I've got the privilege of leading the Climates Programme. And you're probably all thinking, what's the Climates Programme? Well, it's a £15 million initiative funded by Innovate UK as part of the delivery of the UK's critical minerals strategy. And we've been running for about 2 years now, and we are funding, well, £50 million fund to support business-led research and innovation activities to kickstart and turbocharge growth in a circular critical materials supply chains with a specific focus on rare earth metals.
Brilliant, thank you, Martyn. And Julian.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Julian Hetherington. I'm Automotive Transformation Director at an organisation called the Advanced Propulsion Centre. We're automotive linked, but that doesn't mean to say that that's the only business with which we engage. Actually, we're a partner for government to deliver research and development grants, largely focusing on low carbon vehicle technologies, but increasingly that's dependent upon the upstream materials space. In 2020, we were also asked by government to take on board delivery of the Automotive Transformation Fund, which was an up to £1 billion fund to support industrialisation at scale of the upstream supply chains to support the transition to electrified and zero carbon vehicles in the UK.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And my name is Dr. Sarah Gordon. I'm a Professor of Practice at Imperial College London. And as of this evening, when we launch the Rio Tinto Centre for Future Materials, we'll have a healthy budget to play with regards to doing some really, really exciting blue sky research. So on that note, actually, and Martyn, perhaps if I start with yourself, so the scale of global competition is just immense, but what are the factors that will drive greatness in innovation here in the UK to allow it to have that global impact?
Oh, what a question to start with. I think with that, I think from a UK perspective, I think we need to find that niche to go after. And I think when you look at what's coming out of the UK's world-leading research base and universities, I think the one thing that really is looking promising at the moment is urban mining. And I think in the panel, one of the panels this morning, I think it was Marge from Johnson Matthey alluded to the fact that there's a huge proportion of PGMs produced from recycled feedstocks at the moment, and I think that's really an opportunity from a rare earth perspective that the UK really could double down our current investments and really make a significant difference. So it doesn't mean to say that we ignore the upstream at all, and I think certainly actually there's no point in developing a recycling supply chain without also investing in midstream metal making and also looking at the downstream, in particular looking at where you can offtake those materials. So and I suppose the elephant in the room with recycling as well is we need to be looking at where we can apply innovation to make that to make the recycling economic, in particularly of disassembly of end-of-life products. So I think again, going back to the UK's world-leading academic excellence, I think there's a real opportunity for us to improve knowledge transfer from research to industry, and let's look at actually commercialising research. Let's make money from it. It's not such a dirty word after all, I don't think.
What, the academia or the research or the making money?
Well, I suppose it depends on which way you look at it. But yeah, I think if we can actually improve that knowledge transfer, enable the de-risking of that commercialisation through feasibility studies, and have a pipeline of innovation funding. It doesn't have to be just grant funding, and you can also look at other funding mechanisms here, as I'm sure some of the rest of the panel will allude to later. And I think certainly just from a rare earths perspective, I'll just pick on two examples. So I apologise to everybody that's going to get upset for me not name dropping them now, but I think certainly if you look at two key scale-up projects that we've been supporting through the Climates Programme at the moment with Hypermag and Ionic Technologies, both looking at recycling of rare earth permanent magnets in slightly different ways, but both are success stories in that they've spun out of universities, with Queen's University in Belfast and Birmingham University respectively. So we can do it, we just need appropriate funding mechanisms to allow us to do that, and networks that allow us to do that. And I think ultimately if we can better understand and map out the innovation that is coming out of universities in the UK, and actually get it on industry's radar, then we have a really good chance of of increasing our competitiveness.
Excellent. So it's about taking control of some of the uncertainty or some of those risks, introducing the resilience into what we're doing. Julian, I don't know if you've got anything to add to this, and then I know, Nick, you maybe wanted to come in on this one as well.
Listen, I started my career in manufacturing nearly 40 years ago, and it's always when you start looking at manufacturing strategy, and it's the same when you go upstream and you start looking at research and development as well, you do the right thing in the right place. All right, now we've got an added dimension to this, which is at the right time now. And when we look at the UK as potentially having the right capabilities and competencies to do a lot of this research and leverage the the really good ecosystem that we've got between our academic world and our innovation world to get things post proof of concept and then into industrialization readiness, we can be the right place in a lot of areas, and we're definitely at the right time for a lot of these technologies. So the key is getting the confluence of those three factors and making sure that we push in the right areas where we can focus and where we can deliver really well. Sometimes a system needs a little bit of lubrication, right? And that's where government help, whether it be through climates or through the programs that we manage or the ones that Innovate UK manage directly, can really help just make a little bit of difference.
So it's about finding those step changes, etc., and where the little bit of help is needed maybe to unlock the full potential.
Yeah, but not in a random way. You've got to think about what the portfolio needs to look like with a strategic aim, a strategic policy aim, which is why working very closely with government to understand the longer term policy intent, using quite sophisticated tools to plot back to what actions have you got to take, what policy instruments are required, what funds are required, what other frameworks are required, because not all of them are about giving money. Sometimes it's just about creating the right environment. Then you can deliver the policy outcomes that you're looking for. But you've got to have that longer term plan, and that's why maybe right now, looking at the industrial strategy consultation, having just closed over the weekend, and evolutions of other policy actions like the critical minerals policy and the battery strategy even over the last few months will be really important.
Brilliant, thank you. And Nick, do you want to add to this?
Yeah, I think we're really fortunate here in the UK in that we have some incredible universities with some incredibly talented scientists that actually want to be entrepreneurs. And I think Materials Nexus is a really good example of that. The original two co-founders of Materials Nexus did their PhDs in materials science at York and Cambridge. And indeed, we came together via a venture builder called Carbon 13. More about that in a moment. And what are we doing? We've built an AI platform. We've built a machine learning platform that is accelerating the creation of new novel materials that indeed are also more sustainable than you can typically get today. And the value proposition in terms of that materials creation is to reduce the time it takes to bring a new material to market into months and quarters as opposed to decades. The platform, we're a 40-year-old business, as I say, Cambridge spin out, and the platform is already producing formula and recipes, but in what domain? Well, the platform has been architected to all materials classes, but you've obviously got to focus when you've got a finite amount of resource in terms of people and working capital. So we've focused on metals and alloys in the first instance as a materials class. And within that, we've worked with and working with collaboration partners to understand what are the significant materials problems within that domain and what are the value proposition within that materials. So within metals and alloys, we're focused on magnets. And we're of the opinion that taking the periodic table, that there is what we call white space available that can eliminate the use of rare earths. The platform is producing formula. It's been synthesized, i.e. that formula has been created into an alloy block. And the results of that in terms of performance are very much aligned in the predictions of our platform. Right? And we're working on that initial formula to bring to market a zero rare earth or maybe reduced rare earth element magnet that can compete with what the market is buying off the shelf today. In terms of commercially, we have commitments from permanent magnet synchronous motor users, primarily within the sustainability space. And those commitments are close to £100 million. That if we can produce, or when we produce a magnet that can compete with what is coming out of China, and I suspect you all saw the slides this morning and the geopolitical challenges that exist there, that we have a market there that will avail of our magnets. A couple of differentiating points against us, because there are other organizations that are looking at AI to create materials. 2 points of differentiation. One is we're a materials business first. We're a materials company first that is using AI as an enabling technology, as opposed to an AI company that has decided to look at materials. The second point of differentiation from some of our competition is our business model. We collaborate with partners that do have the problems of either supply chain security or otherwise. And we have got an IP model and a licensing model as opposed to a SaaS model, i.e. software as a service. We don't enable third parties access to our platform. We're fully funded, 25 people plus, majority of which are PhDs. I don't have a PhD, so I'm in a growing minority within Materials Nexus. And we believe that we have got a significant opportunity to create an impact on materials challenges, but also on sustainability.
Thank you very much for that, Nick. So in terms of setting up a business in the UK, so from a startup's perspective, and Jeff, maybe if I come to you first on this, what's your experience of working in that innovation R&D space here in the UK, including the setting up of your own projects in your own organisation?
Interesting. It's when I look back at where it's been in terms of innovation in the UK, we are brilliant. There's no doubt about it. It's that next step of taking it from there to commercialization where I think we've generally struggled when it's gone abroad. I think there's also the grant system over the years is a lot better now than it was. But years ago when we was in electronics recycling, when we was part of the EU, trying to get grants in the UK for electronics recycling project was really difficult. Yet we saw our European partners were getting very good grants. And it was really difficult. If we was composting here, we'd get one. If you wanted to do something with extraction of metals or separation of metal, it was really difficult. And I think one of the other things that we have to think about here is taking it to the next step. Bioscope's really, really well funded by private individuals. We haven't got any grants, apart from the very first thing when they started the research project to extract gold from electronics, which was a KTP project with Coventry University. And that worked well, but everything since then has been privately funded. And I think one of the things, if you take the battery industry, for recycling lithium batteries. Yes, there's grants. I was part of a grant system from APC for about £7 million some years ago. That was really hard work doing all the preparation for that, and we got 7 million, which is enough to build a pilot plant, and it's part of a consortium. If you look at our American equivalent in the US, you take Li-Cycle, for instance, they had $300 million grant from the US. Serba had $280 million to build this recycling infrastructure. Now, I know we can't be in that league, but we really need to look at our innovation side of, yes, okay, we've got brilliant scientists, and I've got 10 super scientists at Bioscope, but and they're all under 29 years old, and they are absolutely fantastic at looking at the innovation. But moving it to that next stage, we have to bring in industry that's got the experience. Where myself and some of my other colleagues have worked in mines, they've worked in recycling industry for a long time to build that. But we need to look at what we do. And just one other thing that I need to add about this. We look at the recycling, what's going on in the UK, and certainly from the electronics point, all of it is exported. There's roughly about 89,000 tons of circuit boards exported a year from the UK, which is a major significant supplier. 38,000 tonnes of that is legitimately seen through the Environment Agency. Nobody's refining in the UK. So are we going to build our own refiners? At the moment, we have no choice but to send it. So that's what we're trying to do, is build our own internal infrastructure. We can now, sorry, I'm beginning to rant, so I'll go. Just last thing, so we're now producing fine gold. We can produce fine copper, electroplating, first one since 1991, which was IMI closed down. Could do the palladiums. We're now looking at some of the more rare earths. Tin is the next one we're doing, but the hafniums and various other things, but we have to concentrate it. So it's a long haul, but it's really getting that next step. What are we going to do? Are we going to continue to export? Because export licenses for waste are really difficult, and more difficult from January next year.
Julian, do you want to come in on this?
I do, actually. I think if we look at battery materials, we look at electronics waste, we look at magnets, for example, we are in an incredibly fortunate position in the UK in the secondary materials space. We're a great consuming nation, but sadly we're not yet consuming a lot in manufacturing right now in some of these areas. So what we're doing, we've got a positive mass balance of these materials, from lithium to nickel to cobalt to the rare earths, that's coming in with manufactured products. And then they're getting to end of life. That is a great opportunity for us, with that positive mass balance over primary materials, to then go and extract and reprocess, and more importantly, minimally reprocess, so you don't take them all the way back almost to ground zero, with lots of additional steps. If we can take stuff, and minimally reprocess, we can then have them competing on cost terms and certainly on sustainability grounds with primary materials. And that's a great opportunity that many other territories around the world do not have. I go and talk to colleagues out in Japan. They've got exactly the opposite problem in the car sector, for example. They are completely reliant on imported primary materials. They're not really electrifying their vehicle fleet at a rate, mainly because of their energy system right now, not being able to decarbonize it, so that there isn't a huge imperative to do that right now. And they've got very little in the way of installed car park to generate these secondary materials. So they need secondary materials that could even come from us at a reprocessed level. So we should seize this opportunity and help kindle the research and development about minimally reprocessing these secondary materials.
But there's also the opportunity not just to repurpose or recycle, but to find alternates, to look at substitution. There's an opportunity there for substituted materials, i.e. reduced or eliminated critical minerals, as well as critical minerals.
I agree.
So there's acres of space that we can play in here. We've got super scientists, we have the entire periodic table to work with, and we've got loads of secondary raw materials, perhaps, that we are undervaluing, perhaps at the moment. From a policy perspective, and Martyn, I'll come back to yourself with regards to this, not just in the UK, but around the world, how are changes in policy, etc., affecting innovation?
And I think Jeff touched on this probably in his previous answer, but I think you look at the Inflation Reduction Act and now the Critical Raw Materials Act in the EU. It is having an impact at the moment on where businesses are looking to commercialise their innovation and scale up. So I think we do need to look, certainly if we're going to be serious about the secondary material supply chains, we do now need to look at our own domestic policies, I think, and start to actually have a think about what we can do to actually capitalise on this enormous feedstock that we're importing on a daily basis.
Julian, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, secondary materials is a great opportunity. Primary materials will always be required. Right? And over time, as we saw from the great slides from our colleague from IEA this morning, you will get to a greater dependency and a necessity for all kinds of good reasons on secondary materials, but we still need primary material supply. And we have some great opportunities in the UK, but we don't have necessarily targeted support to help extract them. Right? We've got some great opportunities around lithium, around rare earths up in Scotland, even nickel. and combining that with R&D in, sort of new extraction techniques, new beneficiation techniques that, aren't so chemicals intensive, aren't so energy intensive. So we can develop homegrown materials that, definitely are a big tick in the resilience space, definitely a big tick in the lower embodied carbon footprint space, and actually stand a chance of competing in terms of cost. Then we're doing the right thing in the right place at the right time again. And we must think about policy interventions to support the exploitation, the reasonable exploitation of some of these resources in the UK, and help them complement partnerships around the world, with friendly nations. We're all a lot safer if there are interdependencies between nations around the world. So let's try and keep some of those interdependencies and not just play a one-way bet.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's one of the, I guess, geoscientists on this panel, of course, if there's one thing that we cannot change in this particular system, it is where those rocks are to start with. And no one country around the world has everything that it needs. So we need the interdependency, I guess, between all the nations. So I'm acutely aware of time, but I've been informed that we do still have time for a couple of questions. If there are any questions from the audience, yell out now, and if not, I will pass over to Nick and Jeff on this side. Yes, Jonathan's got his hand up.
Afternoon. Thanks to the panel. Jonathan Molyneux, ERM. Just curious, Nick, you were strong on substitute materials there, and we do hear a lot about the demand-supply gap and the lag for recyclable metals to come along. We don't often hear people, for perhaps obvious reasons, in company of metal producers, we don't often hear people championing substitutes. And I wondered, what are some of the more pressing substitutes that we should have on our radar and be anticipating?
Well, magnets is our current focus. And let me just talk about that for a moment. You can go on a website for magnet producers, and you'll come up with a list of all the neodymium magnets. The amount of conversations we've had with the market, they're looking for something a little bit different for their own, a little bit more bespoke for their own use case, and that's where we think Materials Nexus has a real part to play, not just in the more traditional magnets that can compete, but also more bespoke for different use cases. We also believe that, yes, we're focused on zero rare earth at the moment, but we also believe there will be an element of some of them will still require some rare earths. So that, yes, it's a substitution focus at the moment, right? But we do recognize that some will need rare earth. There are many use cases out there. Think of, I don't know, platinum group metals, think of iridium, think of catalysts for green hydrogen. There may be an alternate to reduce or eliminate the use of iridium within the green hydrogen PEM catalyst, right? So there's many opportunities. The periodic table and the number of opportunities and the number of permutations, dare I say it, it's almost infinite.
Thank you, Nick.
Does that help?
One more question, I think, before you can then come and rugby tackle them all over the break. I think there was... Hang on, let's see. There was somebody right at the... Actually, I tell you what, let's come down here because otherwise our microphone holder is going to have a nightmare. Yes. He was doing a really good dance in the middle of the room, so the choreography won it.
A quick question, maybe to Martyn. So, Sebastian van Oud, I'm from Coventry University, and with the research that started Bioscope. But the truth is that, so this was coming from a knowledge transfer partnership, as you mentioned, which is fantastic. Because you need to have that bridge between fundamental research, fantastic scientists, with industry. But the little issue there is that this is one step towards the application, but then once the knowledge transfer has been done, 3-4 years down the lane, you've got a big project, but then, as Jeff was implying, you need much, 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 much more investment. And in fact, I've got 5 KT projects running now, and they all are successful as each other, different stages, but I'm well aware that once the project is finished, you got something fantastic that needs more investment. And because this investment tends to be private, I think, again, there's another bridge to cross there. And I wonder if the government could also step in and do that, the post-KTP, maybe facilitating the discussion between the next larger investment and the existing partnership?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting one. I think the knowledge transfer partnerships are a great way for businesses to effectively sort of de-risk getting expertise in and actually transfer that knowledge from the university partners into industry. I think you're right, then you can get to a stage then where you've effectively delivered a project, you've got a person that could be embedded in industry, but then how do you then keep that research going forward? So it's an ever-present challenge we have with the way of us operating with government funding cycles that unless your particular project happens to finish at a time when there's an appropriate program to then sort of channel that knowledge into to have a follow-on program, then yeah, it's a slight challenge that we have in the system. We are at Innovate UK, we've got lots of different products and services and various funding mechanisms that we've now developed over the years to offer. So we are now looking at what we can do in terms of innovation loans, for instance, to actually try to enable that business scale up right at that other end of the innovation journey, I suppose. On that last sort of push to commercialization, there's things like investor partnerships where we will work with investors and have effectively equity matched grant funding as well, although at the moment that's very, very good at supporting businesses through the sort of seed or Series A type funding, but it's not quite so good when you're then getting towards growth scale investment, although that's something where perhaps the ATF comes in and other mechanisms that are available through the Advanced Propulsion Centre and others. So I don't know if that answers the question. I can ramble on about various
you can see, but just for the understanding that it's not simply from the knowledge transfer to the application, then the next stage is such a challenge. And I can see that understanding is, so you're saying we might be getting there. You've got some scheme coming up, but this is really, really fundamental. Yeah.
So much of our innovation has gone abroad, really.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that, yeah, you pick up on a really key point there of actually being able to grow something beyond those initial seed ideas is something that in the UK we could improve on compared to some other countries around the world. But on that note, please everyone put your hands together for this fabulous panel.
I was the only one that's... Sorry.